Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. Thank you for joining us. We are going to call this meeting to order. It is now 7:04 p.m. on April 10th, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission Subcommittee on Board Membership. If the Spanish language interpreters, Lizette and Sasha, can please give the information on Spanish language interpretation.
En esta junta tenemos interpretación disponible en español. Para ustedes poder accesar la interpretación en español, debe ir al fondo de la pantalla, localizar el globo, va a apretar el icono del globo, luego interpretación y luego va a apretar español. Una vez aprieta el icono del globo e interpretación, va a poder escucharnos a nosotros interpretar en español. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. The city also, I'm sorry, I thought I was still on mute. The city also offers ACL interpretation, which is being provided by Mary and Christine. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. Please note that this is an automatic captioning service and it is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland's Administrative Code and Oregon state law, and it is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using the Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and/or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings and agenda topics. We like to be clear, not all questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. Now I'm going to turn it over to our co-chairs to go over the land acknowledgements.
Thank you, Corrine. The PAC uses that land acknowledgement on display at City Hall. We acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and the land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enable the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Now we will go into the reminder of community agreements. We take a moment and review Community Agreement Part 1. Next slide. Community agreements Part 2. Next slide. Thank you. Do we all commit to following the community agreements for today's meeting and to gently calling in our colleagues and collaborators if needed? Thank you. I will now pass it over to co-chairs to discuss the timeline.
This meeting is part of the Police Accountability Commission structure and details phase of work, which focuses on the form of the new system. Future phases of work will develop how the new system relates to the rest of city government and the transition plan from our current system to the new one. The commission will work until August 31st, 2023, and will present all proposed changes to City Council for their consideration and approval. This slide shows the outcome documents for the structure and details phase based on the agenda and scope approved by the commission. This subcommittee focuses on how the board's membership will be structured, including board size, appointment, qualifications, reasons for removal, and more. This is the current project plan for the structure and details phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. It will be updated as needed throughout this phase of work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase, which focuses on identifying areas of agreement among commission members as to the form of the new system will take. Today's meeting fits into the light blue box with the red border near the middle of the screen. And these are the upcoming meetings of the Police Accountability Commission that we'd like to highlight. The next full commission meeting is this Thursday, April 13th, and we will have a briefing with City Commissioner Renee Gonzalez. And our other active subcommittee, the Subcommittee on Oversight staff, will be meeting next Monday, April 17th. And may possibly meet again on April 24th. Today's meeting agenda includes time for co-chairs to discuss updates on the draft since our last meeting on April 6th, and then discussion on the text of the draft areas of agreement on board membership. This may include referring the document to the full commission, and either way, there will also be an opportunity for public comment.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. We will now pass it on to co-chairs to describe the updates to the draft areas of the agreement on board membership. Co-Chair Tirsa, would you like to begin?
Yes, could we possibly screen share the document, please? Thank you. And we can start the document, going over the document from top to bottom and revisit areas that still have pending comment. Can the document be shared so that I can read through it if possible?
Corinne, could you go through the discussions info before we do that?
Sure thing.
Thanks.
We will now move on to discussing the draft areas of agreement on board membership and walk through the outline documents and some other resources we do. We ask you follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitated and remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussion. Finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. We would like the co-chairs to get us started. Also, we have a lot of things to discuss in today's meeting, so we will have a limit of 5 minutes for discussions among the members. Thank you. Staff and co-chair, Tirsa?
Oh, yes. Okay, so I guess the first here at size of the board and panel sizes, the first pending item is the amount of members that the oversight board shall have. We have the oversight board shall have 25 members listed on here.
Thank you, co-chair Tirsa. We do make note that there are some comments in the margins here. Do we have any discussion? I see Commissioner Casey has his hand raised. Commissioner Casey.
I apologies for missing the last meeting, and so apologies if I'm doing a little catching up, but I would agree with the comment in the margin about that being a minimum. And I think it would make sense to leave it to the discretion of the board if they need to add more seats or potentially request more funding from city council to add more seats. But I do think that if they find that the amount of work that they are getting is, apologies for my cat as well, if they find that the amount of work they're getting can't be handled by the number of board members that they have, I would like them to sort of have the ability to request more board members.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Do we have any additional discussion? Any discussions? Check. Okay. Do we have a general agreement? I mean, any strong opposition to this amendment? Can we move on? Okay, moving on to the next thing.
Okay, so this alternates has a proposed text change, which reads, alternate members shall be recruited from among former members of the oversight board who were not removed for cause, along with other qualified members of the community. Alternates shall provide historical context and institutional memory to the discussions of the oversight board. Alternates may not vote.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any discussion to this change, for this change? Staff?
Hi, just a quick note on this. So the original text was up here. There was a proposed change. This entire section is in red just because it was moved up before. So the proposed change right now is to eliminate the first 3 lines here and replace it with the 5 lines below. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for that clarification. Co-Chair Casey, Commissioner Casey.
So my question on this, when we say alternates may not vote, are we only referring to like full commission business? Because I would think that the purpose of having alternates is if you don't have enough people to put together a panel to review complaints, then you could have an alternate come in and do that. But if alternates aren't even able to vote in that situation, then it seems like we're not really even talking about alternates so much as kind of having like emeritus members who can help inform the discussion. So I do think there is some value to having true alternates who can come in and be on a panel if they need to, but I'm just not sure if this language would preclude that or not.
Any further discussion? I see some hands up raised. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I know when we were discussing this last week, my idea was that the alternates would actually vote once selected, but there would be, as Commissioner Casey described, an emeritus type group. So that was my thought, that there would be separate groups, emeritus group that we will choose alternates from. And then if we couldn't find any alternates there, that we would solicit, new folks as usual. So that was my thought. Thank you.
Any further discussions, comments, or point of clarification to Co-Commissioner Casey and Sophia? Okay. Do we have any strong opposition to this proposed change? Okay, I see Commissioner Casey has a comment. Commissioner Casey, would you like to state it?
Sure. When I'm sort of working through language, I usually like to type it in the chat just because that helps me keep it straight in my head instead of trying to spill it out. But I basically just put a sentence that I think could replace alternates may not vote. That is, it is my hope sort of clarifies what I think we just discussed just now. So yeah, that's all.
Okay. I have Commissioner Cherie.
You're on mute, Commissioner.
Thank you. As I was saying, while I was muted, I apologize in advance. I'm still getting used to the process here. And I've realized that I didn't propose a change so that there could be more board members, 25 to 30, or even propose to change the wording, that we could leave it up to them. So is it possible to go back and make that proposal, even though we've moved on now?
Staff?
Yeah, if I could just suggest, and co-chairs, please feel free to say if this is okay or not. If we can kind of keep to the one that we're on, and then we can circle back after.
Okay.
If that's okay with co-chairs Tirsa and Obi.
That's fine with me.
Yes, we can circle back to it.
Okay. Okay, we're going to go ahead and proceed with the first. Do we have any strong opposition to the proposed change?
Corinne, I believe Sophia has her hand up.
We're gonna move on to capturing the vote, and then we're gonna circle back because.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any strong opposition to the proposed change on alternates? Do we have a general agreement on the proposed change?
I think I would need to hear the discussion from the commissioners who have their hands up before I made that decision.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Casey. Let's see. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I just want to say I agreed with Casey's proposal. But this other discussion that came up to me is if when we say other qualified people of the community, are we talking about, I'm trying to make sure we're a little bit more specific about that. Would that mean they would have to be commissioners? Or, I mean, my thought was we would want someone vetted as an alternative, right? Not just a qualified member of the community, as vetted by the board, just the same way as everyone else would be. So that would be like a additional recruitment. I don't know. I'm just thinking about it in a little more detail, and I'm just trying to clarify when we say other qualified members of the community. I think someone made this suggestion in the last meeting. I can't remember who it was. But if they could comment on that, I'd appreciate it if they're here this week. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw Commission Co-Chair Tierce's hand raised. Do you have something you would like to add to the discussion?
Yes, and I didn't propose this change, but I do have a comment as to how I interpret it, along with other qualified members of the community. So I interpret that as not limiting only members that have already served on the board to not be the only ones that are eligible for alternate members. So maybe it'd be helpful to clarify what other qualified members of the community mean. Does that mean like other applicants of like for the board, or I think it'd be helpful to clarify what other qualified members of the community is.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tierce. Staff?
Yes?
Oh, I thought your hand was raised. Okay.
Nope.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Any further discussion on this proposed change from Commissioner Casey? Commissioner Sophia?
I was going to ask Tierce, Co-Chair Tierce for her wording because I like that. I can't pinpoint the wording, but I think you hit part of the issue.
Co-Chair Tierce, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what how I said what I what I did. I think I'll type it.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tierce. Commissioner Cherie?
Just a comment, what if there was, so as we go along, we've been leaving things up to the board, letting this board make their choices or things that they want to. What if we said there that, if you could go back on the screen a little bit, what if we said there, instead of alternates may not vote, it's up to the board if the alternates are allowed to vote? It's a happy medium.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherie. We are now at 4 minutes on discussion. Staff, you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so there's the qualified two comments with the qualified members of the community. The term qualified applies to something, which is why we scrolled later down about qualifications and selection criteria. So it's already defined later on. The only thing it might be helpful to clarify that the same qualifications apply for alternates as for membership. But that might help to determine, you know, to make this clearer in terms of what that actually means. And then in terms of the voting question, that might be something that needs further discussion, because I just see that Dr. Moses has noted that we're at 5 minutes, but just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for that clarification. So do we have any strong opposition to the recommendation change?
There are 2 conflicting recommendations, so I think we probably need to move on.
Okay. Are we okay to move on? Thank you. Turning it back over to co-chairs.
I'll wait until staff is done typing here for a few seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. 3 panels. The oversight board may create panels for hearings, for due process, and for appeals. And so the question here is if the panel should be a hearings panel.
Do you have any discussion? Staff?
Yeah, so the last meeting Thursday, there was a question as to whether or not it needed clarification. There are 4 decision points throughout the officer accountability document that could theoretically involve panels, and 3 were explicitly written as belonging to a panel decision. The 4th was whether or not the dismissal of a case, which occurs after a preliminary investigation hearing, is a full board decision or a panel decision. And as you can see in the comment, there was discussion on this in the drafting group on this proposed not having there be a panel for it, which would not require any change in the text as it is. That's what it would be. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for that clarification. Commissioner Casey?
Just to clarify sort of where we are in our discussion, are we specifically just discussing this issue of dismissal, or are we discussing this section overall?
I believe
Overall. This is section, overall section.
The only suggestion I have then is in A2. I think it might make sense to say these panels may have more members rather than these panels shall have more members. Again, just sort of leaving it, since we're sort of using the somewhat nebulous term more serious cases, I think it makes sense to let the board themselves decide sort of what level of seriousness rates what size of panel and such. Otherwise, I think it looks really good. I mean, I think it looks really good regardless. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Any further discussion? Comments, questions, or any points of clarification? May we move on? Thank you. Co-chairs?
And then that's the only comment that I see for panels. So yeah, B, due processes. When discipline is imposed by the board, a panel made up of board members shall not hold a separate due process. Louder mill hearing, this panel should be no smaller than 5 board members.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Just want to, sorry, staff, can you scroll up?
Also, I realized I didn't fully read section A,
Okay,
so I'll just read it. Panels, hearing panels shall be no smaller than 5 board members. In more serious cases, these panels may have more members than in other cases. For cases involving the use of deadly force, panels shall be no smaller than 10 members. The panels shall be created to ensure diversity based on life experience, race, gender, and other factors, including, if appropriate, whether members are nominated by different people or entities.
thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. So do we have any strong opposition to changing shall to may? Do we have a general agreement from changing shall to may as, thank you. May we move forward? Do we have any discussion on due process? May we move forward? Co-chairs?
Sure. Chief, I can read this one. Thank you. I'm back. So for C, appeals panels, appeals will be heard by a different panel of board members than heard the original complaint, except in cases in which the basis for the appeal is the discovery of new information. In either situation, this will be referred to as an appeals panel. Subpoint 1, if the basis for the appeal is the discovery of new information, members of the original hearings panel will form the appeals panel. If a member of the original panel is unavailable, a board member who was not part of the original hearing may be assigned to the hearing. If in subpoint 2, if there is any other basis for the appeal, the oversight board shall create a new appeals panel consistent of at least 5 members.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Is there any discussion? Any questions? Any points of clarification? Seeing that there are no hands raised, may we move forward? Thank you. Co-Chair Obi?
Sure. And number 4, subcommittees. The oversight board shall be empowered to create bylaws that allow for the creation, management, and elimination of subcommittees. Subcommittees must include at least 5 full members of the oversight board.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Any discussion? Any questions? Any points of clarification? May we move on? Thank you. Co-Chair Obi?
So these is the qualification and selection criteria section. Number 1 is makeup of the board. 4 points. A, the advisory board shall have community members who have been impacted by over-policing practices. B, the advisory board shall have community members that have worked with populations directly affected by over-policing. C, the advisory board shall have members who have experience with conducting investigations, case review, and auditing. And D, the board shall have members who have experience in community outreach. Subpoint 1, it is important to center the voices of the community when implementing changes to the oversight board.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Please make note in reference to the comments, public comments and the margins. Do we have any discussion? Any comments? Questions? Points of clarification? Staff?
Hi, just a quick note. If the word advisory was, I don't know where that came from intentionally, but, or if it was intentional, but the new oversight board is not necessarily solely an advisory entity. So it may be restrictive to use a term like that. Just a word choice comment there. No proposed change because staff, but if someone wanted to, just wanted to flag that.
Thank you, staff. Commissioner Casey?
Yeah, I would agree with staff on that. I think removing that will make it clear because I think we only use the term board generally throughout our recommendation documents. The only other thing that I wanted to raise, and I don't really have a change to propose so much as I'm just trying to put legislative intent, so to speak, on the record here. My concern with this is that this will be read as an excuse to just say, okay, we can put 2 members of over police communities on the board. We can put 2 people who are, representative of populations who are over policed on the board. I would like to see this board be majority over policed communities. Frankly, I'd like it to see it be entirely over policed communities, but I have not been able to think of a way to do that elegantly. And I worry if we put that in the document like this, then we risk getting into a situation where it's just too hard to fill seats on the board because they can't find people who check whatever boxes we've given them. So I think this language works, but I just kind of want to put my marker down that I hope whoever ends up implementing this language sees this as very much the bare minimum of what they should be doing rather than just sort of a box for them to check.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Co-Chair Tirsa?
I no longer have a comment. I was going to propose the removal of advisory, which has already been done.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Commissioner Sophia?
I was just wanting to ask a question. Is this language for the makeup of the board similar or akin to what was required for the commissioners as well? I just didn't remember if that's where these came from.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Sheree?
What if we just added the word predominantly? The board shall be made up predominantly of people, let me see the wording. We could just add that one word, predominantly, and that addresses Casey's concern. And then it also leaves it up to the board. They can decide what predominantly means. Does it mean the whole board or half of the board or a third of the board, or hopefully not just 2 people, but
Thanks, Commissioner Sheree. Co-Chair Obi?
I would, I definitely understand that recommendation. I think it's gonna make, I think the term predominantly is gonna actually make it difficult. It's gonna, predominantly over policed communities can't be more than a certain percentage. And then if that's the case, if you're percent after percent, it's gonna be hard to fill a board if you're looking at specific communities and then also other things too, just like using multiples to get smaller and smaller. I like the intent of the things. I like especially what Commissioner Casey said about wanting to have communities who can be represented in this board. I think it's kind of just I wouldn't want to pigeonhole the people to then have a difficult time filling a board of this size and continue to fill it.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. We are at 4 minutes and 30 seconds in discussion this. So we're going to move on to asking, do we have any strong opposition for the removal of advisory from, and also any strong opposition to adding the word predominantly? Commissioner Casey?
Yeah, I like Commissioner Obi, like Co-Chair Obi, I really appreciate the intent behind that. And I think that whatever we can do to find ways to make sure that that happens, even in other sections of the document, I think are really important. But I do worry that putting it in here will put the people who are recruiting for the board in a position where they're going to be sort of having to sort of struggle to find the enough people who are applying, particularly when they're looking for some of these other areas of experience we're looking for. So in my heart, I'd like it there, but my sort of lawyer brain thinks that could do more harm than good.
Thank you. Do we have any, is there a general agreement for the removal of advisory? Is there a general agreement? Thank you. May we move on? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Sophia had her hand raised.
I know we're out of time for this one, and I'm still thinking about ways to word that. So I don't know. I'm just thinking about ways, so I don't want to keep up the time, and let's move on.
Thank you. Co-Chair Obi?
Sure, next, number 2, subject matter expertise. The advisory board shall include people experienced with the police accountability experience, legal knowledge, parentheses, public defense lawyers, civil rights lawyers, and B, other professional expertise shall be considered.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Please reference the comments in the margin from Commissioner Casey in regards to subject matter expertise. Do we have any discussion? Any comments? Questions? Staff?
Just a quick clarification. So for anyone following along, if there's comments, and not just this one, but you'll see it further down, there's a lot of items that have comments. The only way that there's a decision on whether or not to incorporate something is if there's proposed text. So if we need to talk about that and kind of workshop that, that's okay. Or if you just have proposed text, that's okay too, whichever a member prefers. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for the clarification. Commissioner Casey?
So I would propose adding to section A after the civil rights lawyers and parentheses, let's see, police accountability experience, legal knowledge, experience advocating for or providing services to houseless community members.
Any discussion regarding the proposed change by Commissioner Casey?
It's only a text one, I think, it to be and with advocating, just so it's like, the adverb type thing.
Any further discussion? Questions? Points of clarification? Okay. Do we have any strong opposition to the proposed change? to this text? Do we have a general agreement for the proposed change for this text, the text? Thank you. May we move on? Co-chair?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at, could we scroll back up to reincorporate number one, the previous text was C. This is a comment coming from the Q&A section. When talking about the experience of members, technically that C could actually fit in subject matter expertise. So I think, can we kind of, yeah, exactly, we can see both of those and consider changing where this is located, like with people who shall have members of experience with case review and auditing and collecting measures, and that's now part of the next section too. Or yeah, exactly.
Any questions, discussion? Points of clarification? Seeing that there are none, may we move forward? Thank you. Oh. Okay. All right. Okay. Is there any opposition to the proposed change of including by co-chair Obi? And is there a general agreement? Thank you. May we move forward?
Okay, restrictions. Or I guess I'm gonna read over what was just, wait. See, other professional expertise shall also be considered. Or I'll read over all of it. The advisory board shall include people experienced with the police accountability experience, legal knowledge, and with advocating for and providing services to house's community members. The board shall have members who have experience with conducting investigations, case review, and auditing. And see, other professional expertise shall also be considered.
Thank you. Do we have any strong opposition to this text change? Do we have a general agreement to the text change? May we move forward? Thank you. Co-chair, next section, restrictions.
Restrictions. People currently employed by a law enforcement agency and their immediate family members are not eligible for service on the board. People who were formerly employed by a law enforcement agency are not eligible for service on the board. And board members cannot simultaneously be members of any other City of Portland advisory group related to police or policing.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Please make note of the comments in the margin. Do we have any staff?
Hi, just a clarification on this. So there were 12 items which were flagged as known items that would need to be discussed. This was on the list. And the city attorney's office did clarify in response to the question, which, sorry, this collapsed it here, as to whether or not the definition of law enforcement agency, and the response they gave is effectively that the PAC can develop a working definition of that. So this is more of a flag because the actual definition is going to be up in the definitions section of the document up at the top. But just to clarify that question, if there's any other proposed changes to the text that could get worked out now, but when we circle back up to the top of the document would be the time to get that working definition in there, or to refer that question over to the full commission as the case may be. Thanks.
Thank you, staff. Do we have any further discussion from the commission? Any comments? May we move on? Thank you.
All right, I will do this one. Recruitment and recruitment and employment process, including representation. Number 1, members of the board shall live, work, play, attend school, or worship in the city of Portland for at least 12 months.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Do we have any discussion? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Angie?
Thank you. I just have a question about play. What does that mean?
I harvested it from the definition, I think, on I was going to say civic life, but the official office that's on the website, and I'm not sure exactly what play means. That's a good point.
I mean, does that mean if somebody's on a sports? Okay, that's fine. I just I'm a little suspicious of the word play in there. That's all.
Staff?
Yeah, my understanding is that it generally means recreate in some way, in terms of, if you're asking how regularly and all of that, that's effectively the appointing authority's determination. It is on the civic life list of what qualifies you for city advisory board or volunteer role service. If you're asking, do you play a sport and there's like a tournament here every week versus every 6 months, that's ultimately up to the mayor or the city council in practice, how that is applied. So that's just how my understanding of it works right now. Yeah.
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Commissioner Casey?
Just a minor language tweak that I would propose. I think just to make it clear, say members of the board live, work, play, attend school, or worship in City of Portland for at least 12 months prior to appointment. Because I think we're trying to say that we want them to have some stakes in the ground in Portland. But if they say, oh, I lived here 12 months 5 years ago, or I don't know, I feel like that makes it sort of clearer what we are asking for in this section.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I was thinking something similar to both Commissioner Casey and Commissioner Angie. I wasn't specifically looking at play, but I think Commissioner Casey really helped, because if you just come in to Portland, on one day of a week for church and then go back home or play, it's not the same as actually living here and having an experience. So maybe the additions that Casey provided is helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Are there any discussions or comments around the proposed change by Commissioner Casey? Is there any opposition to the proposed change? Is there a general agreement for the proposed change? Thank you. May we move forward?
Number 2, board members assisted by a community outreach staff member shall be available to advance recruitment efforts for vacant board positions.
Thank,
Sure, I can read the rest of these two. Number 3, successors to an unexpired term shall be appointed by approval of council for the remainder of their term. And number 4, recruitment efforts for the board shall include, but not be limited to, free or paid advertisements on television, radio, print, or digital media directed at the eligible public.
thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Is there any discussion? Comments? Questions? Points of clarification? Seeing there are none, we're going to move forward with, if there's any strong opposition to changing the word further to advance. Any strong opposition? Is there a general agreement for changing the word further to advance in the text? No? Is there a general agreement? Thank you. May we move forward?
Okay. Just a small edit. There's a subsection A to 4. So I'm just reading this with the line 4. Recruitment information should clearly state that these are not police bureau or full-time City of Portland positions.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Moving forward to, well, is there any discussion, comments, questions on 4A? Seeing that there are none, may we move forward? The next section, I guess.
Okay.
Mhm.
Number 5, at minimum, staff shall solicit applications to fill vacancies in the board's membership with help from the Office of Equity and Human Rights, the Office of Community and Civic Life, neighborhood coalition offices, mayor and council offices, and other police-focused advisory committees, and the general public.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Any further discussion? Comments? Co-Chair Tirsa.
I would like to add that the applications of board the applications of like board applicants remain confidentiality to the extent allowed by law.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Is there any comments or discussion to this proposed text change? Commissioner Sophia?
No, I didn't have any comment on the proposed change, but I wanted to add, in addition to those organizations, I'm trying to find the word, I want to use grassroots, local grassroots organizations. Because it's kind of specific on the structural advisory committees, mayor's council. There's a lot of groups that focus on policing that are none of those. And I would, and it's a little more specific than the general public. And we've actually had community engagements with some of these types of organizations. So I don't know how to call them. I would like to say grassroots organization and focusing on policing. I don't know. I'm trying to find the right word. Sorry.
Any further discussions or comments? Do we have any strong opposition to the proposed text change? Do we have a general agreement to the proposed text change? Thank you. May we move forward?
Could we, before moving forward, take a look at the last comment for number 5 and adding within the list, so one sentence above, adding grassroots, I guess it would be after the, or before the other police focused advisory committees, but like grassroots organization, or even police, actually, no, that's too specific. So it's grassroots organizations or other grassroots organizations.
Thank you. Do we have any opposition to the proposed text change? Do we have a general agreement to the proposed text change? Thank you. May we move forward? Thank you.
So number 6, the board may create a nominating committee for to refer applicants for board memberships to city council for appointing. A proposed addition to this, coming from one of the comments, is the nominating committee, and the same thing, the nominating committee may include other or people other than current board members.
Thank you. Any comments? Any discussion? Questions? Points of clarification? Okay. Is there any strong objection to the proposed text change? Is there a general agreement for the proposed text change? Thank you. May we move forward?
Sorry, can I move backwards? No, this was a suggestion that was actually looked at. I thought I typed it in the notes. So number 5, and sorry for the timer being used a lot, but to the list of number 5, which I once again stated at minimum to not take away from any specific group, but could we add community organizations? And this would be in any point, I think, before the general public, the community organizations working on racial justice, mental health advocacy, houseless organizing, and police accountability issues. Actually delete that last portion, because I think we kind of have hit that around that too. But racial justice, mental health, and advocacy. Or just call them advocacy, and then the general public.
Okay, thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Do we have any discussion to Co-Chair Obi's recommendation for a text change? Commissioner Sophia?
No, I just wanted to see if we can add an addition in front of, and say nonprofits and other organizations, grassroots organizations. That's all, just not adding up nonprofits.
Thank you. Do we have any strong opposition to the text change for adding by Commissioner Sophia and Co-Chair Obi? Do we have a general agreement for the text change? Thank you. May we move forward? Thanks.
Number 7, applicants shall be screened for potential conflicts of interest.
Well, before we move on to number 7, can we didn't capture, did we vote on 6? Did we vote on that?
I think we did, and I sent it back afterwards to go back up to.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. That
Okay.
was probably me.
Okay,
But yeah, number 7, applicants shall be screened for potential conflicts of interest.
any comments, discussion, questions? Points of clarification? May we move forward? Thank you. Co-Chair Obi?
Sure. Number 8, the board's members shall be appointed by City Council. The mayor, while not directly voting for the appointment of nominees, can forward any suggestions or concerns to the City Council.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Any further discussion? Comments? Questions? Points of clarification? Let's move forward. May we move forward? Oh, City Attorney has raised her hand. City Attorney Sarah Ames.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I just had a point of clarification. The city council, if they appoint them before the charter change takes approval, is it the TAC's intent that the city council as a whole, including the mayor, would vote? And then in the future, the city council as a whole would vote. And in that case, the mayor would only have this advisory. I'm just trying to, I mean, the system of government is changing underneath us, even as you all are focusing on this piece. So I just wanted to clarify that that is the intent.
Yeah, that is the intent. Thank you, Sarah. Definitely expecting this to be after, but you're absolutely right. If it was before, then the mayor would follow the rules that are current.
Thank you.
Thank you for that point of clarification. Commissioner Obi, Co-Chair Obi.
Yeah, okay, so number 9, council shall review applications of nominees to the board and vote whether to approve each member within 45 days.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion? Questions? Commissioner Casey.
I am again struggling to figure out kind of the language that I would use to implement what I'm trying to say here. But I'm trying to figure out within 45 days of what we are having them have to take this vote. Because I feel like if it is within 45 days of the vacancy opening up, that's maybe a little tight. But if it's within 45 days of the nominee being brought before the council by whatever process that is going to happen, then I think that's 45 days is a very appropriate amount of time. So I just would like to put within 45 days of something at the end of that section.
Thank
That
you.
looks great.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Do we have any comments or further discussions to Commissioner Casey's text change? Proposed text change? Do we have strong opposition to the text change? Do we have a general agreement to the proposed text change? Thank you. We're now going to take a short break for 5 minutes. We okay with 5 minutes, or do we need a little longer? More, please. Okay, we'll take a 8-minute break. It is now 8:14. Co-Chair Tirsa, Co-Chair Obi. We will be going to the next section, compensation.
Yes, and we will actually circle back to compensation.
Okay.
So we could go to section E. And also I think staff has their hand up.
Staff.
Yeah, hi. So there were, again, 11 subsections that were flagged in addition to compensation. So this is sort of a time check. We've gotten through 7 of them, but they're not all resolved. So there are 4 ideally shorter subsection items left to figure out. And then after that, we'll probably need to resolve some of the ones that were flagged for further discussion because of the 5-minute rule from today before getting into compensation. So just wanted to quickly flag that because it is something that in terms of staying on the project timeline, it'd be a good idea to get done with at least the rest of it, not necessarily compensation. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, for that clarification. Co-Chair Obi, Co-Chair Tirsa. It's taken onboarding process and training.
Can't hear you.
We Co-Chair Tirsa, you're cutting in and out.
Okay, onboarding process and training. After council appointment, members and alternates shall go through both training organized by staff and peer training with more experienced members. 1, training organized by staff may be delivered by staff and or by experts and affected parties. Topics shall include at minimum A, city training applicable to all members of city advisory groups. B, training on public meetings and public records law. C, training about the Portland Police Bureau, including history. D, training about the oversight board and staff, including history. Training about the oversight board's internal structure, including its bylaws and other internal processes. F, training about civilian oversight of law enforcement. G, training about local history of over policing, including geographically specific training. And H, paperwork necessary to ensure access to city resources, including compensation and other support services.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Any further discussion? Any comments? Questions? Points of clarification? Is there any opposition to removing the word new to the text change? Is there a general agreement for removing the term new in the text? Thank you. May we move on?
Peer training. Members shall be assigned to one.
Co-Chair Tirsa is still inaudible. You're breaking up.
Number 2, peer training. Members shall be assigned to one or more current full board members for peer training. The Oversight Board shall establish a list of responsibilities and topics to be covered during peer training.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any comments? Questions? Any points of clarification? May we move forward? Sorry, Co-Chair Obi.
Yeah, just I think we discussed that. To include like the inclusive thing of members and alternates, I guess would be appointees. Right, to include them both rather than, and it's what's the difference between the two?
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Is there any further discussion on the text change for changing members to appointees? Commissioner Sophia.
I kind of missed what Co-Chair Obi was giving the difference between members and appointees. I just kind of missed that rationale. Sorry, just got distracted.
Co-Chair Obi, would you like to reshare? No, okay. Thank you. Do we have any strong opposition to changing the text from members to appointees? Do we have a general agreement for the text change? Thank you. May we move forward?
Sure. Number 3, or did I read 2B? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, good. Number 3, the Oversight Board shall review its own training structures and curriculum and is empowered to revise these on a regular basis.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Is there any further discussion? Comments? Questions? Any points of clarification? May we move forward? Thank you.
So F, term lengths and renewability. 1, members of the Oversight Board shall serve terms of 2 years with the option to serve a 3rd year at the member's discretion. And I'll pause here. Staff has their hand up.
Staff?
Yeah, so the text right now is actually members of the Oversight Board shall serve terms of 3 years. There is a proposed change that has not been finalized in any way to change that to 2 years with the option to serve a 3rd year at the member's discretion. And so that was discussed last meeting and hit the 5 minutes. If that were to change, then this lower section would also go away. So it's kind of it's all one thing, but right now, if left unchanged, the term is 3 years, and then there's a proposal to change it.
Thank you, staff, for that clarification. Do we have any further discussion regarding this text change? Commissioner Casey.
So this is another one where I see sort of where it's going, but if we just say they can serve 3 years, there's nothing preventing a member who gets to 2 years from saying, I'm burnt out on this, I'd like to stop doing it, and then appointing a vacancy. So I worry that this is maybe just overcomplicating a process that already would be able to happen just if we had 3-year terms.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I get what Commissioner Casey is saying. My thought was when I proposed this is that it would be a little more complicated if we didn't know that people were leaving in 2 years and then having to refill those positions. So just having a little foresight, but I'm willing to listen to others as well on their ideas.
Co-chair Obi?
Yeah, well, I think they're both things of merit. I would just, for simplification, like 3-year, I think like a 3-year term longer, better, and then hopefully there's engagement within the new board to prevent burnout, and if there is, like having discussions to replace the person and have a resignation process, which is listed here. I would prefer the just 3 years, not have the 2+1.
Thank you. Commissioner Angie?
Thank you. I understand worrying about burnout very much. But I think the simplification of making it just 3 years is definitely more advantageous. So I don't have strong opposition to either, but I'm leaning towards 3 years.
Thank you. Commissioner Sophia?
Okay, I'm hearing the group and I agree with them. I have no problems with changing that. And then I would just like to add, that the board has the ability to adjust that as needed. The terms as needed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff?
So this is kind of a challenging thing. I think one of the things, and this came up in A1 with the size of the board too, there are some things that are very explicitly requested of the Police Accountability Commission to be included as a recommendation in code text. One of which is the size of the board, another of which is the length of the term. So this is one of the things that may not be able to be deferred to the oversight board to determine, except if the oversight board in general can propose changes to code. And so, which other documents already say that it can. So that's already built in, but this is one of those things that you might actually need in order to comply with the city council's requests in resolution 37548 to define explicitly. Whereas there are other things that might be, as Commissioner Cherie cited earlier, like things to be deferential to the new oversight board on, because they're not explicitly written as needed to be in code. Thanks.
Thank you, staff. Do we have any further comments or discussion or questions? Is there a strong opposition for changing the commissioner staff?
So just to clarify, sorry, Commissioner Sophia, are you withdrawing the proposed then?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. I'll just quickly adjust the text. If you could just bear with me a moment, Corinne.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move on?
Yeah, I think these two will go together. So I'll read number 3. Members whose term will expire can apply to renew their term 3 months before the expiration date. 3 months gives the board and necessary staff time to plan to fill the vacancy.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Is there any further discussion? Comments? Questions? Seeing that there are none, may we move forward?
Number 4. Oh, sorry.
Yes, number 4.
Number 4. Existing members can apply to renew their term one time and will be considered for the position. Applying will allow the board and necessary staff. Applying will allow the board and necessary staff to evaluate the board members' renewal application.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Any comments? Commissioner Sharif?
I'm just wondering, in relation to, I think the words used were like having the culture down or having the historical, like they know the history of the group and everything. I'm wondering, why did we choose to they could apply for one term? I mean, if they could apply for 2 terms, obviously there would be the option to say, no, you can't have this 3rd term. But I'm just thinking that for longevity, for knowing, the ropes, and that it could be difficult to get new members in with a lot of quality memories and history. Is it prudent to leave it at 1 time, or could we rethink that and leave it like that they could do up to 3 terms?
Co-Chair Obi?
Yeah, no, thanks, Sheree, for that point. And I actually agree. I think it'll be nice to hear from the CRC members who are here, or maybe 1 or 2 of them at the end of this meeting. But I think actually at least 2 terms would be good, because I think the term we used before was an institutional memory. Having like at least 2 overlapping terms would work, but having someone on there for 6 years and going on 7, 8, and 9 and onboarding new people also seems like a good idea too. So I would, in my head, think that 2 renewals would be possible, or more than 1.
Thank you. Commissioner Angie?
Yes, I think that there's a cap of 8 total years, just an FYI. So no matter what the renewal terms are or whatnot, I think there's a cap of 8 years. That's what we had discussed when we were talking about this.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie. Staff?
Yeah, that's a city policy. However, and that's true. I would also add that the way that the alternates text is written right now, because it allows for outgoing members to be alternates, you could still retain their institutional memory by having them be appointed as alternates, without being able to participate in the same way, but certainly able to share their knowledge in years beyond the 2nd term.
Thank you, staff, for that clarification. Do we have any further comments or questions? Further discussion? May we move forward?
I have one, Corinne.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, just for some clarification. So this would mean they would have 6 years, but then they wouldn't be able to do it again because it's an 8-year cap. So my thought is, I don't have any problem with renewing with 1 term, but I was just thinking, if people wanted to do the 8 years, there's because of the, well, never mind. There's just, never mind. I'm just thinking out loud. Sorry. I'm just gonna leave it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. May we move forward?
Yes, so number 5,
Yes.
to prevent a number of vacancies at a time, members whose terms have expired are welcome to serve on the board until their replacement is appointed. A, members shall wait no more than 3 months until their replacement is found. And B, these members shall be given a definite timeline by necessary staff, board members.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tirsa. Do we have any further discussion? Any questions? Any points of clarification? May we move forward? Thank you. Co-chairs?
6, leave of
Okay. Go ahead, Tears.
Okay, 6, leave of absence. Leave of absence time shall be granted if needed during term for issues related to mental health. And I believe this is a proposed text to include.
Staff,
This text was from the compensation section and was moved down. So unlike the last one, which was moved and showed up as track changes where we said that it was approved text, this one has not been discussed, so Co-Chair Tierce is correct. This has not been reviewed in any way yet, except a sort of cursory discussion as part of the whole section on Thursday.
thank you, staff, for that clarification. Do we have any further discussion? Co-Chair Obi?
Yeah, good point from the audience as also physical health too. And mental, physical, yeah, physical and mental health. Physical and or mental health. Okay.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Is there any further discussion or comment? Is there in, Commissioner Casey?
Oh, sorry, I'm unmuted just in time for a cat kerfuffle. I think I would go a step further than that and even say leave of absence shall be granted if needed for good cause. And you could say including issues related to physical or mental health. But I just worry we'll end up excluding something that we're not foreseeing, but that would be a good reason for a leave of absence. Like if somebody has a family member who needs caretaking, or I don't know, I sort of can't necessarily think of them, but just worry that we're being too conscriptive when really what we're trying to do here is say, like, we're not going to make you, we're going to want to retain people. And so we're not going to kick them off the commission if they need to take a couple months off for a good reason.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Any further discussion? Questions regarding the text change? Okay. Do we have any strong opposition to the proposed text change? Is there a general agreement for the proposed text change? Thank you. May we move forward? Co-Chair?
Sure. G, removal requirements and process. Number 1, the board may request that the city council remove a board member for good cause. A, good cause removal includes unexcused absences, excessive excused absences. Excused absences include unforeseen events, health reasons, being out of town, or missed meetings due to conflicts of interest. Major, undisclosed conflicts of interest. Loss of eligibility, such as moving away from the city of Portland. Unmet minimum participation or workload requirement. Breach of confidentiality. Inactivity in board activities, including subcommittee work or hearing participation. Failure to complete mandatory training. And D, other reasons for removal could include resignation, death, or incapacitation.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Is there any comments or discussion or questions, points of clarification for this section? Seeing that there are no hands raised, we're going to move to, is there any strong opposition to the changes, text changes, and section G, removal requirements and process? Any strong opposition? Is there a general agreement to the proposed text change? Thank you. May we move forward? Co-Chair?
Yep, let's scroll down. Thank you. Number 2, removal of a board member prior to the end of their term requires a vote of city council.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion, comments, or questions regarding this text change? Co-Chair Tirsa.
I'm wondering if we can, like, if there, for example, there's like an incident, of, like a board member has assaulted another, board member or harassed or intimidated or threatened, if that, like, instead of waiting for a vote from city council, if, HR can be able to also remove, a board member under those, circumstances. And I'd like to include some language around that for this section.
Co-Chair Obi.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. It's like, in specific areas of like that might have include like some sort of confidentiality provision instead of going through like city council in a public meeting. Like, is there any way, while even though maintaining the independent judgment of the board, having the Bureau of HR or a specific group like the Bureau of HR, to allow for or facilitate removal, in a, I don't want to say discreet, but in like a quicker and more efficient manner if some major breach of confidentiality, trust, or criminality happen in relation to a board member.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. For any further discussion or comments? Commissioner Sophia?
I think, I put in the chat, but I don't have any specifics about adding the circumstances that will call for immediate removal. And she was suggesting it could be something like assault or whatever. I don't know what, let's just, I mean, I'm just thinking about having a few items that we would, there would be no debate on, right? But I just haven't looked at that list yet. I know there's lists of those in other places, but maybe we can consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Do we have any further discussions or comments? Staff?
Yeah, would it be accurate if is the subcommittee conceptually in favor of including text like this? And would it be okay if co-chairs worked between now and the next time we meet to develop the exact text, since there's nobody, I didn't see a typed up version. Is that something that, is there at least consensus around conceptually including this? Is the question I'm asking. Yeah, I'm seeing hands, so thanks. So we'll look into this. I can say just in answer to the question that the Bureau of Human Resources has said that they are capable of looking into this sort of situation, that Human Resources administrative rules do apply to all public, the ones that explicitly say to public officials do apply, because as you know, members of advisory boards are really all volunteer boards and commissions are public officials. So the rules do apply there, and there are actions that can be taken if there's a violation, depending on what that violation might be. So we can definitely look into that and then check in with co-chairs about potential text for the next time. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Do we have any further comments or discussions? We're at 4 minutes on this topic. Okay. Do we have any strong opposition to the text change and 2, removal of the board member? Okay, I'm waiting for staff to finish. Okay. Do we have a general agreement to the text proposed text amendment. Thank you. May we move forward?
Number 4, a board member seeking public office shall resign their seat at the time they announce their candidacy or file their petitions, whichever happens first. The individual can choose to apply for the board if they no longer run for office or end their terms in government.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Do we have any further discussion? Any comments? Questions? Points of clarification? Seeing that there are none. Okay, thank you. Is there any strong opposition to the text change before? Oh, can we move on? This is that. Can we move on? Okay, thank you. Co-Chair?
Sure. So can you scroll up just a tad bit? Sorry. Number 9, or sorry, H, internal processes, including quorum. Number 1, the oversight board is empowered to write its own bylaws covering its internal processes not addressed in law.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Comment? Points of clarification? Do we have any strong opposition for the removal and the changes? Do we have a general agreement for the text amendment too? Thank you. May we move forward?
For sure. I'm going to read this quorum section all the way through, okay?
Thank you. Okay.
Number 2, when making decisions about procedures, protocols, or other decisions affecting the full board, quorum shall be defined as a majority of seated members of the board. Number 3, for adoption of bylaws and other significant matters, in parentheses, including proposed removal of members, the quorum shall be 2/3 of the seated members of the board. Number 4, individual subcommittees of the board shall have a defined number of members, with quorum defined as a majority of said subcommittee members. And this is an agreement thing for quorum for the panels of the board shall be a certain set of numbers of the members of the panel, and I would suggest a majority.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Is there any further discussion? Comments? Questions? Any points of clarification? Thank you. Do we have any strong opposition to these proposed text changes? Is there a general agreement to these proposed text changes? Thank you. May we move forward? Staff?
So that is the end of the document. There is one thing that we did mention but didn't talk about. Well, actually 2 things. One is the definition of law enforcement agency, which is up here. And with permission, I think that might be a good thing to put into the co-chair staff bucket between now and the next meeting, just like the previous item about that there was conceptual consensus on. But the other section is the confidentiality section. So I'm going to scroll to that part and hand it back to co-chairs if you'd like to focus on any part of that. I also don't know if there was any proposed changes that anyone had.
But you said confidence, sorry about that. Staff, you said confidentiality, you mean compensation?
Yeah, sorry, my mistake, compensation.
Yeah, okay. It could be confidential as well.
Co-chairs, would you like to,
Read it.
Or-
I actually think there's a section of Q&A that actually goes back to an issue I think we can handle now, and that was the amount of years or amount of terms that we could do. It appears that there are CRC members that end up doing 9 years, or there is at least one in good standing that ends up doing that as doing over the 8. So there might be a provision for specific specific organizations related to the city to go over that 8-year threshold for volunteers, which say something that we consider that then you could have renewed for 2 years if allowed for 9, and then not be able to do a third if the city wants you to get as close as possible in a divisible number.
okay, thank you. Just to know, oops, the time is now 8:58. So just making you all aware of the time that we do have to get to public comments. So staff,
Sorry, accidental hand raise.
co-chairs, would you like to add any more comments or to compensation before we move forward? Commissioner Sophia? Commissioner Sophia? Okay. May we move forward? Okay. We're going to turn it over to staff for next steps.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, was unmuted and then muted. So there are a couple notes. These 12 items for the next meeting. What we'll end up doing is circling back to the remaining ones of these items. Of the 12, I think 7 are resolved and 4 are not. And then there are a couple things, 3 other things which came up today that need to get discussed as well. All of which are in the Q&A, not to mention the compensation section. So with that said, it'll probably end up being about 8, maybe 9 things to figure out in the next meeting, one of which is relatively large. And so want to encourage everyone to take the chance to read over the sections that are not fully resolved and come up with text. It helps things go faster. If there's an idea written out ahead of time, that tends to make things move a little quicker in the next meeting. So there'll be this version will be sent out to all the members. Then there'll probably be a revision after co-chairs have a chance to take a look and do those 2 things that we just mentioned at the end here, the law enforcement agency definition, and then the taking of the conceptual agreement and converting it into text around the BHR, Bureau of Human Resources content. And then that'll be recirculated. The next meeting is likely to be 2 weeks from today. So we'll be asking for members of the subcommittee to give their input, including proposed text changes within probably a week of receiving that updated draft, so that there's time to collect those, put them all into a single document and recirculate that so that members of the subcommittee can see what their colleagues have proposed, as well as so that members of the public can see the updated draft. So that's effectively the timeline. Any questions on any of that? Might have spoken without using exact dates, so I'll try to be a little bit more precise here. It's probably that you'll get an update by the middle of this week, and an expectation that by a week after that, next Wednesday or Thursday, the 19th or 20th, to send back in any proposed changes that can be recirculated in advance of the Monday meeting. And then on Monday, the 24th, we'd run through the remaining items only, not the text that's already been approved today, and then finalize and refer the document.
Thank you. We will now take open public comment on the issues the subcommittee is discussing. Or community members can also tell their story about policing and police accountability. Subcommittees now allow members members of the public to give public comment for up to 3 minutes in length. Please raise your hand and Zoom if you would like to speak. We have Yume.
Thank you. Yume Delgado, he, him, Vice Chair of the CRC. So I'll start by trying to answer the question that I heard posed to us earlier on. I think we would probably be fine with 2 3-year terms, although now I have to go back and check and see if we are all in compliance on that. So thanks for that, everyone. Just a couple of things. I want to thank you as always for the thoughtful, diligent work that you've been doing on this project. I do think that earlier on there was some discussion about 25 people doesn't seem like enough. I think 25 is probably a good number. You're talking about people who are having to put on hold any other public service or political aspirations that they have for 3 to 6 to 9 years to do this work. And you also want to make sure that you're going to be able to find 25 people who are qualified and thoughtful about the work that they do. And we have a very hard time finding 11. So I think that's you don't want to create too large a board. One thing that I heard during this discussion that left me a little confused, and I would encourage you all to think about or maybe define a little bit more clearly, is this discussion of what exactly you want alternates to do. Currently on the CRC, and I think many other city boards, alternates are people who have been previously approved by city council and are ready to be sworn in to take over for someone if they resign or have to step down. There are other organizations that have advisory bodies or emeritus members, right? But those are 2 distinct sets of duties, right? So it's one thing to say, hey, if we're only going to have people serve for 6 years, we want them to come back and be able to maybe help us out on appeals or do something of that nature. It's another thing to say, hey, we always want to have 25 people on this board, and so we're going to have people who are pre-approved and ready to be sworn in at a moment's notice. Okay. One housekeeping thing is, if you are going to have 25 people, I would encourage you to think about what exactly those people are going to do in terms of how often you need to take, say, a voice vote, which will take you 10 to 15 minutes. CRC meetings, we have to take like 2 or 3 of those every meeting. Lastly, I think one thing that you should probably clarify is, if you're going to ban people from running for public office while serving or having prior prosecutorial experience, you might define whether or not that includes people who are, say, civil rights prosecutors, right, for the at the federal level. Also, does that preclude someone from running for, say, school board or for soil and water district? Or are we really trying to exclude people from running for larger public office? I think that's my time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Rochelle?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a former CRC member also. And when I first started on the CRC, the terms were 2 years, and they were subsequently changed to 3. 2 years is much too short. It really takes a person a good year to know what they're doing. Is my experience. What you might want to consider, though, is having the initial term be 3 years, and maybe the second term, if you allow it, 3 years, and allow for a third term of only 2 years. So that would get you to the 8 and you don't go over to the 9. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Dan?
Hello, can people hear me?
Yes.
This is Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a commission member and a longtime CRC fan. I agree that there should be 3-year terms. I think it would be best to try to get the city to fix the problem for groups that have 3-year terms, to be able to let a person serve out their 3rd term. And as I mentioned, there's somebody on CRC now who's already started their 9th year. So I put that in the chat. I think it's worthwhile not throwing somebody off just because of some arbitrary number. Also, as the staff indicated, I don't think we should be, as a commission, too vague about the number of members there are. The Training Advisory Council has 30 members currently, and sometimes takes voice votes where they go through each person. Their county code in San Diego County says the board can have between 9 and 15 members. Currently, it's set at 11. You should think about putting something in code that says it could be as large as 30 or whatever number you want, and with a mechanism to expand it as needed. I'm a little, also join the people who are a little confused about the alternates. I think that it's probably not a good idea to have alternates who can vote sometimes and not other times. I think they should just be used for plugging in when somebody is either on a long leave of absence or disappears. They should, however, be encouraged to sit on subcommittees and do work with the group so that they're engaged until they're needed to step in. There's some language in B2 that says experience with police accountability experience. I'm not sure where that language came from, but it might need to be fixed up. It says that you propose that there should be people who are advocates for houseless folks. It doesn't say anything about people who have actually been houseless, which might be a good idea. I also strongly suggest adding in the charter language about the people who are supposed to be represented on the board, because it's not in the document right now. I'm a little concerned that in H, it removed the language about the difference between a quorum to hold meetings and a quorum when voting. And I think those are 2 different ideas that need to be addressed in the document. And I also don't think that that a person whose term has expired should only have to serve 3 months. If there's nobody to fill their seat, the people are going to want that person to stay as long as they're willing. They can always step away and say, I can't anymore, but they should have the ability to stay on longer if they'd like to. And just finally, as a co-chair of the Oversight Staff Subcommittee, I worked on a workload of the board calendar, trying to make sure that people wouldn't be required to attend more than 3 meetings a month. And I shared that with you all yesterday, and I hope that was helpful and is helpful as you move forward as discussing the compensation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. There are currently no other persons from the public with any comments. So we're going to move on to the conclusion of our meeting. This is a time for facilitators, co-chairs, and staff to summarize any items already brought up today which didn't fit into today's agenda. We'll recap those items here and use them in developing future agendas. We won't be using this time to add new items not previously mentioned or to discuss any items, but we will use this list to develop future agendas so these items can be addressed. Recaps garden plot co-chairs. Do you have anything you would like to add to the garden plot?
No, other than resolving some of these lingering questions, especially heard in the Q&A section from the community, but nothing for me specifically. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Obi. Staff?
There's one item that was raised by, or it came out of the item raised by Deputy City Attorney Sarah Ames, which is the question about the mayor's office and appointment. That the reason that's a garden plot item is because the part about figuring out the transition plan, which is likely to include all of the time under the current charter, unless it is very likely to include all the appointments under the current charter structure would likely be in the transition phase. And so that would fall into the next phase of work, and that's why it's in the garden plot. So the part about the council when the mayor is a voting member. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Co-facilitator, Dr. Moses.
Nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and now we will adjourn our meeting. As a reminder, you can now submit advanced public comment to the Police Accountability Commission via web form, voicemail, or postal mail. Thank you to all of the members who attended today's meeting and for your contributions today. Thank you also, interpreters. Finally, thank you, the members of the community, for attending and contributing your thoughts and questions. If you are not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The time is now 9:12 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks all.
Thank you.